Welcome, everyone. I'm Robert Maciejko, co-founder of the INSEAD AI community. Today, we're very excited to speak with two INSEAD AI founders to explore their companies, the opportunities and challenges they faced, and the key lessons we can learn from their journeys. You might have seen, as highlighted in the 2024 INSEAD Alumni Entrepreneurship Report, Yann Lechelle, CEO of probabl, and Tommy Mehl, founder of Rashi, are part of a proud INSEAD founder legacy. INSEAD ranks as the #1 source of founders among European business schools and #4 globally. About 73% of alums at some point embark on entrepreneurial adventures after INSEAD. Collectively, they've raised about $24 billion over the last 10 years alone. Your journey from a staff interpreter for basketball legend Magic Johnson to an AI entrepreneur is fascinating. Could you share how that transition came about and how INSEAD played a role in shaping your entrepreneurial path?
Thanks, Robert. So I play basketball. That's the only reason why I was motivated to be an interpreter to Magic Johnson's Lakers. But in fact, I started coding, I was 10 years old. So my career has been one of a software engineer, hobbyist first, and then a professional until INSEAD. And after INSEAD, I became an entrepreneur. I was probably the only entrepreneur from my promotion, 2001 July, at the worst possible time, when the internet bubbles 1.0 crashed. I created a number of companies since then, without capital, with capital and leverage, with co-founders or loan. And I sold every single one of those companies. And of course, I've been using AI across my journey. In fact, I was doing deep learning back in 1991 as a final year project. So my career is one of a technologist, someone who actually likes software because it creates a lot of value. But I've grown increasingly frustrated because the value keeps being captured by the very same companies that do not distribute the benefits of technology sufficiently well in terms of, if you look at taxation, for instance, big tech does not pay taxes in Europe. And so that skews the market in so many ways. But they also consolidate way too well, and they play the European playground way too well. So that is my current frustration, and I have an answer for that, which is a new company called probabl.
Now, probabl, and the spelling is problematic for ChatGPT. It doesn't really know how to work that, but it's the official operator of Scikit-learn, one of the most widely used sets of tools in data science. Can you share why Scikit-learn is so important to businesses and researchers today and how you support its growth?
So just to be clear and on the record, I have no merit for Scikit-learn. Scikit-learn has been created at the INRIA Research Center in France, and it grew out of the need for machine learning tools, the middleware. It's applied math, basically, and that emerged pretty much at the same time as big data, and data scientists became a real profession. This tool has been incubated by the research center for the past decade or so, and the French government decided to invest money to make sure that this asset remained relevant. Now, Scikit-learn is a fundamental tool in the toolbox of data scientists, downloaded 1.5 billion times, 80 million times a month, typically 22% US, 25% China, 14% India, 5% UK, 4% Germany, 3% France. So it is proportional to GDP in terms of usage. Scikit-learn is not, as you hinted at the beginning, it's not the type of AI that is linked to ChatGPT or equivalent technologies like LLMs. It is applied math for tabular data, so quantitative data for supervised and unsupervised learning. Typically, you use Scikit-learn to do fraud detection, to do recommendation engines. So the sort of AI that is based on pattern recognition in so many ways. And some of the companies that used it the most early on were Netflix or Amazon for recommendations. but now you find it pretty much everywhere in the industry. JP Morgan typically has 400 models in production using Scikit-learn. And the company that we are building is a spin-off from INREA. And I am the entrepreneur that will lead this effort. Now, I brought the entire team with me. So we are 14 co-founders. And the company is a balanced shareholding structure aiming to be 1/3 public shareholding. So INREA is a shareholder. The French government is a shareholder. 1/3 private investors, and 1/3 co-founders and employees. So it's quite unique in its governance and its approach, because Scikit-learn essentially is patrimonial. It belongs to France. The brand belongs to France. The team initially belonged to a research institute. And the goal is to execute on a mission, so almost like a B Corp, where entreprise à mission de souveraineté industrielle et numérique. So the goal is to perpetuate this general interest asset that benefits the entire humanity, in fact, but build a business model around it. And the inspiration is very much like Red Hat, where we build new value on top of the open source, which remains free for all.
Download figures that Taylor Swift would be proud of. Would it be fair, Yann, to compare you to Hugging Face, which is for generative AI, and you're more for the data science and machine learning?
It doesn't quite compare well, because a shortcut that people use for Hugging Face is to say it's a GitHub for LLMs. So in other words, you go to Hugging Face to find models. Models are just artifacts of two things. The models are being created as a result of feeding data to algorithms. And then you end up with a model. Now, Scikit-learn is just the software. We provide the software. So the comparison that we can do is between Scikit-learn and PyTorch or TensorFlow. So PyTorch is the open source that is essentially built by Meta that does deep learning, and TensorFlow is built by Google. Scikit-learn is more downloads than PyTorch and TensorFlow combined, but it applies to tabular data, classic, boring machine learning, whereas the others, they are very much in the trend of deep learning.
Thanks for the explanation. Hopefully people understand now where probabl sits. So Yann, congrats on your recent funding round. Can you share how this new investment will accelerate development of specific projects or innovations within probl and to help data scientists and machine learning professionals?
The fundraising is quite atypical in so many ways. So as I told you, we are aiming to have 3 shareholding groups. And so the pre-money valuation is 24 million euros. And we're aiming to raise up to 48, which means 24 private plus 24 public. So far, we've raised 5.5, half public, half private. But because the company is a public interest, VCs have a hard time appreciating the value of the company, because they think that this company cannot be sold. Rightly, this company is not meant to be sold. It's meant to IPO. So we are dealing with different types of investors that understand the long-term mission of the company. We have raised with 70 individuals who have put in between 500 euros and 150K, typically. People who hold director roles in research or AI research, of course, or actual data science positions in companies, typically people at DeepMind, people at Google, Databricks, Anaconda, AWS, Red Hat, and so on and so forth. So we have a number of people who have invested money, and we also have Mozilla Ventures and also Aperture Capital. And then the French government doubled the investment, because that's the way we've structured the fundraising. So it's 1 for 1. We're going to be raising again probably Q1 2025. We're 14 co-founders and already 30 people in the company.
Congratulations on the success so far. I'm going to go to Tommy now. Tommy, you've worked with cutting edge technologies like Web3, tokenomics, and AR Cloud at Wipro. How has this experience shaped your approach to building Rashi, especially in integrating advanced tech like AI and data clustering?
I graduated INSEAD in 2018, and I'll just start off with a quick story. When I was on campus, and I think it was Jeff Ralston or one of these guys were on campus, and they were giving a pitch in one of the amphis, and I remember asking them, they had been on campus in 1996, and they had gone straight into the internet after that. And I remember asking them, I'm like, when you were at INSEAD in the 90s, in these halcyon days, what was the energy and curiosity like with this internet era that was upon us? Was this something that people were very excited or interested about and these types of things? And I remember his answer was actually no one was talking about it. It was the same old enterprises, consulting, and these types of things. But the internet was just not really something that was percolating on campus. And then, of course, it took off by storm and all of that. And then when I was there in 2018, I don't think there was anyone talking about artificial intelligence, including me. Okay, there was a bit of a Bitcoin and blockchain vibe because all the coins are pumping up and these types of things. But I think it's funny because now you, of course, see that INSEAD's really trying to invest in these AI capabilities, and everyone's trying to figure out what's happening now and what's coming next. There's always so many more questions than answers. After INSEAD, I was always very keen to emerging technologies, startups, and these types of things. My background prior was in startups. I was working at a capital markets fintech, and we got acquired by Thomson Reuters in 2017. That's when I went to business school. Afterwards, I wanted to get more on like the corporate side of technology because I had zero exposure to large enterprises. I joined Wipro, and I was also very curious about this like globalization framework of staffing, of outsourcing, of emerging skill sets. And I was very keen to also just explore also the emerging opportunities in India. That was something that was clearly showing of interest. Wipro made a lot of sense to me to join, and there I was for 4.5 years. And I did an array of roles there because I did an MBA training program for emerging leadership at the company, and I wore hats in like mergers and acquisitions and outbound sales hunting, and really just being on the pulse of all things, delivering emerging technologies. So in 2019, 2020, of course, really the pulse was in cloud, and the company was investing billions into cloud for large enterprises, for hybrid clouds and multi-clouds, these types of things. Pretty much, I found the role at the company where I was doing emerging technology strategy for the company's CTO office, next generation platforms for enterprises to do proof of concepts on emerging technologies. I was effectively doing emerging technology strategy point of view and incubation internally for our own next generation technology strategy, also for our M&A, also for our enterprise clients. How should they be thinking about their emerging technology ideas and where they should be looking at proof of concepts and really developing holistic 360-degree point of views on emerging technologies. So I dived into a lot of emerging technologies, things from robotics, things from augmented reality cloud, which is the internet layer of augmented reality hardware. When AR devices are connected to the internet, what does the experience look like to be an internet interactive hardware? Things like Web3. Also, what does Web3 for the enterprise look like? That was really my pet area of interest at the time in like 2021. What does it mean for Uber to create an Uber coin? That was something I spent a long time trying to figure out. What does that mean for an enterprise to adopt Web3 beyond kind of just shoddy crypto projects? What does it mean to actually sustain these emerging technologies for their consumers? And then that, of course, leads us to artificial intelligence. Effectively, we were seeding this idea that the world's becoming increasingly complex, increasingly competitive. The deluge of data is only accelerating. How can we help enterprises recontextualize their most pressing high-level challenges to the topics they need to analyze? If there is data on the internet, and the internet is just a continuous data stream, so can we help you calibrate an endpoint of the data that you need to analyze, and you can inference large text corpora and our technology to effectively create a trend emergence algorithm. So then that goes to what we've been seeding for the last 18 months or so. Really what we're doing is building this core technology of a trend emergence algorithm. So the way that I like to think about it is that in 1999, we had PageRank, and that was for searching for information on the web. And what we're building now is Topic Rank. It's about the progression from the era of information to the era of insights. This is something that I speak about a lot and I think about a lot right now in the past 2 years. The generative AI fulcrum has really exploded. This is what everyone's trying to explore, how to create value from the generative AI, from the LLMs and the chatbots and so forth. But for us, it still comes down to, does this really solve the problem of the data deluge? I don't quite think it does. I don't quite think it does for a number of reasons. LLMs natively aren't connected to the internet. And further, there's always a fundamental problem, in my opinion, with generative AI is that the more mission critical your analysis use case for an LLM, invariably the worse it'll perform. The more you need it to be robust, the less likely it is to be robust. It's for generating ideas. It generates thoughts. That's where we're developing this technology to be more grounded, more robust. It's about ground truth trend emergence. That's really what we're focused on. It's about, for us, on just a high level, the way that I view it is, and I still hold this belief, that analysis of unstructured data. And what is unstructured data? To me, that is the internet. Analysis of unstructured data, to me, is, I view it as the next $1 trillion opportunity in computing. There's so much information on the internet. And how are we contextualizing this information, to me, is still very immature. And I think that there's going to be room for a lot of different ways to orchestrate the data to what you need to analyze. Because if data is the oil, then to us, it's about context is the engine. For us, that's really what's missing. It's about curated data to analyze. For us, it's about building an input agnostic and a data agnostic algorithm that can inference the trends that emerge. We have templates to contextualize these trends to deliver new kinds of business outcomes. For us, it's about the front-end application of machine intelligence to augment human analysis. So it's really about pressing levels of strategic analysis. Can we give you a technology that can give you algorithmic velocity and scale, and also an algorithmic point of view, an algorithmic objectivity beyond human subjectivity, human context? This is what we're trying to do, is create a technology that can give you a new way to think about insights for the data that you want to analyze. We have some pretty cool, unique templates for insights for some pretty bespoke use cases.
Talk about the templates a little bit. Can you walk us through how the process works and explain how your algorithm or approach stands out from other AI-based trend analysis tools?
The core is always the question that we're thinking about is, are we building a technology? Are we building a solution? Or are we building a product? And for us, what's the most impactful and what can be the most disruptive is if we really focus on building the core technology and the core set of templates that are applicable across different kinds of contexts of analysis, that the analysts can integrate their own data. We can't build a search engine, primarily because we're too small. Maybe in the future, we will build this search engine into the internet, which would be like an ecosystem of insights applications integrated into internet data streams. But for us, it's about building this core technology. For instance, the user can inference. Let's just say that the user wants to look at the past 3 years of patents on electric vehicle data. Let's just say that they can go through the US Patent Office and they can download something like 13,000 patents. And this is a use case that we have. The user can define their data corpus. And let's just say the first thing that they're trying to understand is they want to inference Tesla's patents. They want to understand what are the topics that Tesla's working on. So for one thing, they can seed the specific topics that they're looking to analyze. They can feed it if they're looking specifically on energy storage, if they're looking on battery charging, if they're looking for solid state batteries, they can seed the keywords, and that guides our technology's inference because it's about something input agnostic and also text agnostic. So the user can define how they want to analyze it. Then they can inference Tesla's patents. And the first question is, it's really about the data that you want to analyze and what would be the insights that the data can recontextualize analysis. So effectively, what is the business outcome that we can actually drive from actually inferencing these trends? So that's really the core of how we want to build this technology, is something that is actually useful to recontextualize a strategic ideation, because that is the problem that we're solving is in the realm of strategic ideation for analysis. Let's just say that the first type of insight is this algorithmic perspective of what technologies Tesla's working on. And Tesla has something like maybe 400 patents that they filed. And this is just a proof of concept that we built. Let's just say that the technologies that emerge are on battery pack power sources, like improving charging rates per second. And we see that there's a topic on the torque slippage on their wheels, on thermal energy storage, on fuel door actuators, whatever it is. The algorithm identifies these specific topics that Tesla's working on. Okay, so that's like the first piece of maybe what can be an insight. The first is that you can just get, up until today, what's been filed this kind of ground truth understanding of, from an R&D perspective, this is how Tesla's developing their technology. If maybe there hasn't really been a way to be able to inference like a huge patent set before and to get this kind of understanding at scale. If you're inferencing the patents, this is how you can think about a company's developing their next generation of their technology products. So to be able to get a sense of how Tesla is developing their next generation technologies by looking at what they've done up until today. That's the first piece. What topics do we get? And once we get these topics, how can we contextualize it? So the point is, what we've done is we've inferenced 1,800 other companies that are in the data set of electric vehicles. We have 1,800 companies, and we're trying to understand, on the basis of Tesla's topics, can we identify which companies have complementary capabilities to Tesla on these specific topics? The point is that we inferenced 1,800 companies. We have a specific template for complementariness to a topic. So we have this pretty bespoke, I think it's a very sophisticated template of an insight, of an output. So this is about the output of what the insights are. It's about these kind of analysis templates. You can say like a dashboard also, but in my opinion, it's the most sophisticated insight context that will exist or that does exist. Long story short is what we identify is that actually Ferrari has very complementary capabilities to Tesla in a few very specific topics. So things like battery charging rates per second. So we see that Ferrari has highly complementary capabilities to Tesla. Maybe people aren't thinking about Ferrari as like an electric vehicle company. The point is, what's the business outcome? For us is about mergers and acquisitions for company sourcing. And maybe the traditional process is by going through a banker for mergers and acquisitions, and they'll give you a list of companies and they'll go through their diligence process, and maybe they'll go through their patents also. They'll try to fingerprint the topics and such, and maybe they'll come up with a list of companies. But for us, it's about this inference that effectively in minutes will give you this context of these companies are complementary to Tesla for these specific topics. It's up for you as Tesla, as an analyst, to understand what you're trying to improve in, what capabilities you're trying to improve in. Are you trying to identify complementary capabilities? Are you trying to acquire companies that have similar capabilities to have more of a monopoly position? There's many reasons why acquiring Ferrari might not be a good answer. But from a technology equilibrium, our algorithm can identify that on the basis of the patents, actually, there's a lot of strong fit. This is the kind of algorithmic lens and objectivity that we're trying to provide these business outcomes. Is that the kind of thing that can be like a high level outcome that businesses would pay a substantial amount, ideally per inference? And that's really the model that we are trying to pioneer. We are still building the technology. There's a lot of ideas that I've just germinated. It takes a lot to build this. There's a lot of ways that we want to implement this technology, but that's an idea of a business outcome that we're trying to achieve.
Thanks so much, Tommy. So we have a pretty good overview of what you guys are doing. I will throw in now 2 questions from the audience that came in early, Yann, during your time. To the audience, we're going to go after this into a more general discussion about entrepreneurship, INSEAD, and the like. Stay tuned for that. I'm going to start with the question from Marina. Yann, this is to you. How would you see unstructured or non-tabular data plays in the future of AI, ML, tech stack?
So that's a very, very good question. I think Tommy touched on that. Basically, there's a lot of data out there which is unstructured. 20 years ago, we were promised the semantic web, and it has still not arrived. So there is technology for it. There are standards for it, but there is no direct incentive. In other words, it is quite an effort to structure the data in a way that makes it compatible with the rest of the world. So when there is internal data trapped in companies, usually it's stored in regular databases with schemas that are specific to the company. Now, the semantic web requires that we all get together and harmonize around protocols. Now, what's interesting is that there has been no general external incentive to do so over the past 20 years, so the efforts have stalled. But what's interesting with LLMs is that large language models feed on a huge amount of data, including, for fine-tuning, data that comes from inside the companies. And so as a result, large language models and generative AI is creating a pool for knowledge graphs. As a result, we are seeing an increased interest for knowledge graph to feed all sorts of machine learning algorithms and layers. If you look at Gen AI, you can look at it as just a human-machine interaction layer. Why? Because humans interact in natural language. They produce natural language. And so you can process a lot of that interaction in real time or asynchronous, like Tommy said. You can look for patterns in things that exist in an unstructured way. But these things will become structured if you look at the rights owners, typically. Right now, large LLMs are constructed by stealing data, in other words, harvesting and amassing all of the data without asking very much for permission. But some people are objecting to this. Going forward, there's going to be a lot more scrutiny into accessing data, and we'll need to find data that is usually unstructured or hidden away within data lakes in ways that have not been tapped yet. So there's going to be a huge opportunity, and I agree with Tommy, that there is a treasure to unveil from within companies to blend it with public data or publicly available data to create augmented data structures that we can mine, turn it into, how do you call that? It's called a view of the world. In other words, LLMs can sometimes create a sort of, not understanding per se, but a representation of the world. And so we're going to be specializing models to represent different versions of the world, sometimes geared towards the enterprise, sometimes geared toward general class problems applicable to B2C. And so that is, to me, the future. Tabular data is just one type of representation. It turns out that tabular data is extremely well structured in many ways because it is tabular. So you have one tab, one column that represents a data point. Big data is largely made out of that, but LLMs creating a pool to organize the data and make sense of it. I think the opportunity is only increasing as a result of that.
Second question is also to Yann, and to follow on in a way. You mentioned JP Morgan's running models. How do you recommend other companies explore ML impact? Let's say I run a plastic extrusion business. How would I go about developing the competency or resource to see if my business problems are ML solvable? So how do I do it if I'm not an expert?
So if you look at tabular data, it's really something that is very artisanal in many ways. So we've uncovered something which is counterintuitive, is that most companies are still struggling with digital transformation. So that's an opportunity. Many companies have yet to organize their data in a way that is accessible in a data lake. So the first thing is to generate data or gather data in a way that is exploitable. I was a CEO at Scaleway, a cloud operator, for 3 years. This company delivers cloud infrastructure. You would imagine that it has all of the data that it needs. The answer is no. When I joined the company, the data was not available. So every line of business, no matter how digital, needs to be properly organized around the data that it doesn't have, that it doesn't create yet. So you need IoTs. If you're in a factory, typically, you need to generate, I don't know, a pulse. If you have a machine that keeps humming, great. So far, so good. But when there's dust entering the engine, that could be the beginning of the end. Can you detect patterns around your machinery? Can you detect productivity gains based on data points that are linked to HR? HR is linked to the weather, is linked to fatigue, and so on and so forth. Can you create data points that are linked to your general productivity as a company? As soon as you generate those data points, you organize the data, then machine learning can do the rest. Now, LLMs cater to a different category of AI problems, just like image recognition also can be helpful to solve different categories of problems. So you will want to use image recognition to detect faults in the production line automatically. And that is fairly classic, right? So if you don't have the depth of expertise in your company, you can subcontract some of that to people who will analyze your issue. And if you say you want to optimize defects on your production line, then you need to install a camera somewhere, start tracking, and then you use a human in the loop to tag things. This is a good unit, this is a bad unit. It will take 1 million iterations, but at some point, AI takes over. It's an iterative process. There is a massive opportunity because precisely most companies have not yet fully digitalized their entire production environment.
So there's hope for plastic extrusion businesses. I'm going to go now into general questions. I'm going to start with you, Tommy. As experienced entrepreneurs, what advice would you offer INSEAD alums and students who aspire to launch ventures in the AI era?
I view AI as really just parallel and an extension of everything that's been going on in software. I don't view it as a different category. I think we have software and we have software as transacting with databases, and now we have software as algorithms. And I think it's two sides of the same coin. I don't believe the idea of AI as a story is 3 years old or from 2013 when AlexNet or whatever started taking over. I view the story of algorithms mostly as old as the web itself. So the point is, I think for people that do want to spend their career in AI, I do believe that there is a lot of room to develop a career for the next 40 years in AI. AI means so many different things. I'll echo what Yann said. I think really it comes down to developing an understanding of what are the outcomes that you want to impact with machine intelligence. Are you trying to impact the top line of your business with AI? How can AI help affect the revenue opportunities? And based on what your strategy would be on that, whether it's more productive sales processes, productive call center transactions with your customers, or if it's something more on the cost side, how can an AI be used on the manufacturing floor or whatever it is? And the point is, you have to start off with a real understanding of these are the kinds of outcomes that I want to develop into my business. Then from there, of course, it's about developing the data infrastructure, developing the data points, and developing the human operation of the data to be able to get it effective, because otherwise it's just directionless, and you need to have that to be able to develop the outcomes, because otherwise you'll have a bunch of generative AI, digital transformation, proof of concepts that kind of don't ultimately get anywhere. Then you just end up going on to the next trend in 2 years in your innovation departments. I think to be able to have that clarity and focus is really pivotal for any type of enterprise. So with algorithms, I think it's lovely. I think it's fascinating. I've been diving into algorithms for a handful of years now, and it never ends. There's a treasure trove of different types of algorithms, just as much as there's a treasure trove of different ways of interacting with the World Wide Web and with different object-oriented architectures to build different kinds of social networks or whatever your service is. I think it's really about developing an intrigue, developing a curiosity for the algorithms, learning what are the different algorithms that they do. How can different algorithms transform or recontextualize what you're trying to analyze, understand the different parts of your business? Really, you have to spend the time, you have to put in the sweat equity to learn the algorithms. It's beyond LLMs, it's beyond generative AI. There's so many different ways that algorithms are used today in Bank of America. And by the way, Yann, I loved kind of the rich detail of the ways that like enterprises were, like JP Morgan's adopting Scikit-learn. I can totally see that. We've experimented with Scikit also with our own algorithms at Rashi. But yeah, JP Morgan is using AI in so many different vectors of their business, of their technology, of their human user touch points, whether it's internal or external. I think it's really about being a technologist first and foremost. And for me, it's also about being an analyst. It's really about developing that clarity of what is happening now and what's coming next, and to be able to develop your own understandings of strategy. Because for me, actually, when I take a step back and think about the bigger picture of businesses, of so many enterprises developing LLMs, and effectively Google maybe even cannibalizing its search with Gemini, and they're in this position where it's riskier for them to not develop Gemini LLM chatbot, even though it in all likelihood diminishes the quality of the search and the profitability of the search, but it's riskier for them not to do it. For me, it's about strategy. I think strategy is still incredibly underrated, and it's more underrated than ever in an increasingly complex world. It's to be a trend analyst, to be an analyst at heart, and to really develop the curiosity and the energy for the technologies is vital. I think that's really just the way to stand out, because there's going to be so many people competing for the same jobs at the same enterprises when there's a handful of roles in these innovations, CIOs, CTOs, partnerships, and so forth.
It's pretty exciting times for INSEAD. Obviously, we have people today that are technically deep, and that takes a bit of time. On the other hand, I've spoken with various entrepreneurs, including some from Y Combinator. What's clear also when you look at the track record of some Google alums, They have a lot of difficulty going to market and getting to scale in the business sense because they don't always understand how the businesses work and they don't always connect from a communications point of view. There's a lot of opportunity for people, in a sense, like us to be the bridge. You build your technical competence, but if you do that, you can have great success. I don't know, Yann, any other comments on advice for alums and students if they want to launch ventures?
Clearly, the duality of understanding the underlying technology and the business opportunity is massive. I think there's a shift. So the coming of age of our generation, so I don't know, assuming that I'm one of the older ones, having graduated in 2001, Tommy is the new generation. But what this means is that there is a renewal of leadership. In other words, the older generation that was in leadership positions before the tipping point in terms of technology. So I'm actually not seeing a tipping point. I'm seeing technology as exponential. Technology is accelerating. And nowadays, if you think Facebook time, if you look at the social network movie that we all saw, the movie makes it very clear that the tipping point for Facebook was when everyone on campus had access to the internet. And that's only years ago or so, right? Now everyone has access to the internet. And Africa, that missed the ability or the opportunity to invest in connectivity in the ground, did a quantum leap by adopting mobile technology. So now we have 5 billion humans enabled with digital technology, either mobile or wired. The leaders of the past who have not fully appreciated, because they could not, they were trained in a world where things were more linear, not exponential, are now leaving. That gives us an opportunity as insiders and as business leaders to actually accelerate digital transformation. In fact, there's a lot more opportunities. I think I'm in the wrong business, by the way. I'm in deep tech, and so is Tommy. But I think there is much bigger opportunities for traditional businesses to be updated using technology or existing technology. If you're building technology, you're actually competing with big tech. It's really hard. A lot of capital, a lot of risk. But taking any company that is dormant or sitting idle or basically being less competitive because it has not been fully digitized is ripe for embarking into this exponential transformation. So I do not advise necessarily to become an entrepreneur in tech. I think there are many more things to do if you're looking for an opportunity. However, it is very exciting right now. I would not invest in large language models today. There are many signals that say that's a risky track. Yann Lechelle, number one, who knows a thing or two about deep learning, says that we've reached the end of what LLMs can produce. Now we can do many things with LLMs, of course. It's wonderful technology. It will be combined. But LLMs per se have reached a point of diminishing return. And what OpenAI plus NVIDIA plus Microsoft plus Google are trying to tell us is that bigger is better. That is not true. It consumes too much energy. It is not fully efficient. It will be optimized. So we need to look at different ways to harness the algorithms. So to me, the opportunities are yet to be rediscovered in the space of AI. We might experience a crash at some point because the machine is heating up. If NVIDIA loses 20, 30 points, the entire system collapses because right now, NVIDIA is showing that we need more and more demand, including nuclear energy to feed it all. I think that cannot be sustainable in this trend.
Let's think about INSEAD for a second. INSEAD emphasizes global leadership and innovation. How do you view the role of schools like INSEAD in shaping future leaders for the fast evolving world that we are in now?
So I'll quickly rebound on that and let Tommy also answers this question. I am very critical of the current wave of LLMs because I think society is not ready for it. We have to be careful because society is perhaps not ready to lose millions of white-collar jobs. because a lot of the jobs are actually configured based on the way we've structured the minimum income and so on and so forth. A lot of the jobs are bullshit jobs also. So LLMs are a revolution in the way that they could replace a lot of repetitive tasks. That's good for productivity. It's not necessarily good for society. I have a theory that California and Washington could become the first states or even nations to be able to provide universal income, whereas the rest of the world goes bankrupt because they capture all of the value provided by LLMs. And they turn all other humans into ignorance because we don't have to learn effort. So as leaders, we need to think about societal impact. And therefore, something which is brewing with environmental concerns needs to be extended to AI as well. In other words, to me, the modern company is concerned about financial and non-financial dividends because that creates a competitive environment, performance, non-financial in the form of open source, typically. Giving open source distributes knowledge more widely. Having a neutral carbon footprint is also beneficial because it is not non-financial, but it does contribute to a better societal and stable environment.
For INSEAD, the role of bringing this to the fore. I often say in our private chats that I don't see the adults in the room, and INSEAD could be a source of some of the adults in the room. Tommy, what do you think INSEAD should be doing in this world?
By the way, that was a very provocative comment. There's a lot to say there also. Just for the sake of having a differing point of view, when I think about LLMs and automating jobs, there's probably a large element of truth to it. Are there going to be machines that are going to be making my salad, robots? And will that be more cost effective for businesses? And that'll be good for the businesses, but it'll be probably disastrous for the 10 people that are working behind the bar making salads, that are lower class and these types of things. So there's definitely going to be, I think there's almost certainly going to be areas where people are going to try to automate a lot with LLMs, a lot of the automatable processes. I think generally speaking though, with LLMs specifically, I'm not sure if I've seen the evidence that they are going to automate jobs at scale. I just want to give a case study and Yann, this is also where I'll defer to you if you have a thought on this. But for me, it's about human translators, a professional translator that can translate from Italian to Russian or whatever. Are we going to see an automation and replacement of professional translators by LLMs, which is the quintessential LLM machine task of being able to do this task where it's so phenomenal at getting the 0 to 80%, that's correct, but it's so terrible at getting the 80 to the 100%. I think that's the snag of this automation piece. I haven't seen particular evidence, and I could be wrong, but I haven't seen particular evidence that translators are going to be out of the job. And if anything, they are using LLMs to augment their work and make them more productive, if anything. So it's a point of open topic, open thought of what are the areas that LLMs are going to transform to replace people or to augment them positively. I think they are still a bit of open questions. I think there's going to be some areas of machines, automation, these types of things that we spoke about. In terms of INSEAD, for me, actually, my favorite kind of trend that I think about a lot is the rise of curated communities. I think that's super important. Right now with LLMs, with anything software, it's about the erosion of trust that we're seeing. We're seeing everything is hacked. That's such a trend that's everywhere. Every single piece of technology can be hacked. Even now with autonomous driving, if you really think about it, these machines can be absolutely hacked. And there's definitely a point of fear to be thinking about it. If you're these companies, how do you defend your fleet? I think for me, INSEAD was so important and pivotal for kind of this like very curated international and for me, very open and facilitative of kind of just like very curated, intelligent, and completely diverse communities. I think that's invaluable. And for that reason, I still think INSEAD, I wouldn't have been able to do what I do now because of INSEAD. I think it's really just about investing in the strategy and the technology. I think those are as important as ever. I still think strategy is underrated. I think really understanding the truth of what's going on and what's coming next is a timeless set of a skill set of analysis that individualistic critical thinking is as important as ever that these schools should be fostering.
I fully agree on your second part, for sure. The second part, unfortunately, there is already evidence of jobs being massively lost. But if you look at one given person, that person will be able to augment its work. Typically, very astute juniors or seniors that can do the job without juniors because they can easily harness the power of these tools to not recruit a junior. So there will be increased competitivity from seniors, typically legal teams. They do not recruit juniors anymore because they don't need them. That creates a generational gap because you do need the juniors to be trained to become future seniors. And so at the individual level, whoever is smart enough to adopt these tools will manage. But at the collective level, you will end up with a reduced workforce. And the problem, and I am Schumpeterian, I believe in creative disruption, but Schumpeter never lived to see the exponentials. So the danger is the velocity at which jobs are being replaced. And the danger is stemming from the fact that you have 5-6 companies that have access to 5 billion humans. These companies, they want to charge you a rent per month to capture the value, and they will take jobs away because they can disrupt those jobs overnight once the technology is available. And everything that is, so I pasted 2 links. You should look at them. These are 2 French companies, Dust.ai and Twin.ai. These companies, they actually automate a lot of the workload inside the company. They can automate so many things that you can actually do the work of a team of 10 with 1 person. It's crazy. So jobs will be lost. Again, it's not a problem if people have enough time to retrain. But typically with these exponential technologies, it's not going to be the case. It's going to be massive. It's going to be rapid. And there is one thing that humans cannot do, including the very best experts in AI, is that they cannot predict well, accurately the future. There's a McKinsey study that was floated in 2017. They asked when each category of cognitive task would be solved by computers. People said 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. They asked the very same people the very same question 6 years after, that is last year. And everyone said next year, 5 years, 3 years, 7 years. In other words, things are going much faster in the rearview mirror than in plain sight. In other words, we get surprised. And I'm worried because we're in France right now, in the middle of a financial crisis. Our debt is through the roof. We are going bankrupt at this speed. And if all of the value is captured by a handful of companies, we're in deep trouble. That is my concern.
Certainly a role for INSEADers, as we've heard, and for INSEAD as well, and to discuss some of these issues. You both represent somewhat different views on some of the issues. If we can capture it, that would be wonderful. Many INSEADers are eager to get involved with impactful companies. How can they contribute to or collaborate with your companies? Yann and then Tommy.
The company I've created is a spin-off from a research lab with an amazing asset, so I have an unfair advantage. But I did create a company with a mission baked into the bylaws. So impact, again, to me, is as simple as that. We need to accelerate the creation of companies that are future-proof. And the new generations know it better than us. I say us, the older ones, because the older ones had it easy. But there's going to be a lot of challenges going forward, geopolitical ones, environmental ones. We need to create companies that are future-proof, which means that we need to flex a new muscle, which is basically extra financial reporting. What else are we producing as a result of being a corporate citizen of the world? And that can take many forms. And I think INSEAD is the right school with the right mindset to actually start working on this seriously. So in my case, it's open source. I'm a software company. I don't require expensive GPUs or data centers. So I'm producing social dividends through open source. That is what we do. Other companies can actually reconnect the different layers of society. Other companies can focus on the environment, lower the carbon footprint, or recycle, and so on and so forth. And these things, I think, will play a major role in creating sustainable companies down the line and participate in a better society. I think we've reached the end of the truly naive liberal world order. It's not enough.
Tommy, your thoughts on how people can get involved?
We're striving disruptors, we're inventing a new technology, and we're trying to actualize this trend of algorithmic insights beyond generative AI. Algorithmic insights being connecting the deluge of data that is the internet into actionable insights and ways to contextualize this data for business analysts, for enterprises. For me, it's about people that are ace analysts to the bone, because we are a company of analysts. Everyone at Rashi is an analyst. We always need to think about the analysis of the business outcomes that could be possible with the data that we are inferencing. So I think people that are hyper analytical, I would say, and also people that are passionate futurists. One of these trends is we're going from intellectual quotient to emotional quotient and now to adaptive quotient. I think that's an essential framework of mind that's needed for kind of a rapidly changing world. So people that are just excited about learning and unlearning and about just truly understanding what's happening now, what's coming next. People that really want to dive into new technologies and really just think through, ideate creative new use cases. I invite people to reach out.
So I'm going to speak in a question from Romit Taguri. Yann, he's working now in smart mobility. How do you see cost of computing massive dynamic geomobile type of unstructured data in the AI, ML world? Very expensive today.
What's interesting with digital technologies is that if you look at the trend for the past 70 years, it's been ping-ponging between centralized, decentralized, cloud versus edge, Web 1 versus Web 3, by that blockchain equivalent technologies. We've had mainframes and then personal computers. So this ping-pong effect is typically a sort of organic evolution of things. Now, I believe the cost of the current approach with transformers and GPTs and LLMs is unsustainable in so many ways. In fact, we don't have enough energy on the planet to sustain that curve. So that curve will, at some point, plateau or be completely reviewed by new technology. Typically, edge computing is the answer to that. If you look at Apple, Apple is a company that has no business selling our data. And they have been harnessing their own cash to produce chips on device. And so our iPhones are extremely powerful. You can thank ARM, that have designed super efficient chips that work for mobile phones. So the competitive framework has created efficiency at the edge. And so these things are coming. There are companies that are working on AI training modules that operate on the edge, also for military applications. And that is a main driver for it as well, so that there is autonomous, local, independent intelligence, in other words, autonomy. And so that's already in your phone. Actually, you don't even know it. If you put your iPhone in airplane mode, you can query for cats, dogs, bicycles, mountains, and it will find them. That is a direct model on device that identifies objects. Now, the next versions of Siri will use small language models to correct you as you go, large language models to answer Wikipedia-style queries. So that's coming. Of course, that requires a little too much memory for now. The large language models are hungry. They require billions of parameters, but that's going to be massively optimized. And if you can play a role in shaping that, then do, and that can be your product. Otherwise, just sit idle, wait for the right moment to pounce and use that technology when unit economics become relevant for you. Again, look at Apple. Apple is always late to the game when it comes to innovation, late to the MP3 players. Look at the success of the iPod. Late to the voice technology. Siri version 1 was not great, but the next version is going to ace it. So basically what really matters is to be very strategic about it. Tommy makes a salient point here. You need to think about how these technologies align with your strategy and use them at the right moment to solve the right problem.
Yeah, just a super quick point on that. And for me, this is something I find fascinating. I still think it's a bit of an open question whether in 5 years from now inference becomes cheaper or more expensive. And I don't think it's an obvious answer if you consider things like token lengths, if you consider things like the size of the models and how correct the models need to be in their inference. I still think it's an underrated question. I've actually seen research saying that it is going to get more expensive, even though that seems like contrary to the logic that we would think about. It seems likely it'll get cheaper, but it is still unexplored. Look, we've already seen pushback on even cloud transformations to some degree. Every enterprise is different, but we have seen, I think we saw, for instance, like LinkedIn was not going to be using Azure's complete cloud infrastructure, and they were going to be still having their infrastructure private cloud type of stuff. And ultimately, the cloud economics just didn't really make sense for them in the long term. And obviously, it gets quite expensive. Like the more you compute, the more you use it. And I think that's always going to be the open question. What is the actual business outcome that you're trying to get, whether it's the top line or the bottom line? So I think those are really things that you really need to think through, really need to be critical in the analysis of, to really understand different kinds of technologies, different kinds of software, different kinds of algorithms, to really be able to make sense. Ultimately, your goal as a business leader is to be correct as often as possible with these decisions. That's just my food for thought on that.
Thank you to Yann. Thank you to Tommy and all the participants today. Thanks to Fabio for monitoring the chat. So thanks.
Bye, guys. Thank you so much.